All right, welcome back. We are COMP301 in the summer 2020 semester at Centennial, and it's week 3, part 1 of our broadcast. And today we're going to be talking about a few things. One of them is Linux utilities. Okay, so more Linux utilities, more or less. Okay, so that's why this is called Unix Linux utilities that we're going to be hitting today. So first things first, I wanted to mention that your quiz 2 has been released. So again, going back to the schedule, we're sitting at week 3. We did file system last week. This is kind of in a reverse order. I'm doing utilities this week. So some of the stuff we did that was supposed to be done last week, we did this week. We're just switching things around. Just from a logical order perspective, I think I wanted to hit it slightly differently. Next week, we're going to start more in the Linux shell environment and probably a little bit of bash scripting. What I want to do when we get into week 6, and I talked to Patrick, the other instructor in this course, he's actually one of the coordinators of this one. I talked to him, and what I think I want to do for the between now and week 6 is create a little Linux server for you guys who are doing your JavaScript stuff, as well as for those people who are going to have me for JavaScript. So that's COMP301 starting, I think, next week we get together. I'll be joining Patrick's COMP301 course next week when he does his broadcast. Okay, so I'm not sure if he does his broadcast, but I'll be joining you guys and help you out, I think. So that's what's happening starting next week. I'm also doing COMP301, which is programming 2. Where I'm sharing that with Narendra. So if you guys are taking any of those things, COMP301, and I think you will be, some of you, and or COMP301, and you're in the right sections, then I'll see you again during those courses. All right, so that's one thing. So again, by the end, what I want to do is build a little server, and I'm thinking about building a little, a couple ways we can do it. We can build an Apache server. Not a big fan of Apache these days. I think it's, again, it's being superseded by Nginx because a lot of the stuff we do nowadays is using Nodejs. And especially as you move into COMP301, which is, we're redesigning COMP301, which is going to be using the whole mean stack. So that's Mongo Express. I'm not sure if it's going to be mean or MERN actually at this point. And it could be React or Angular that's coming up for you guys, I believe, in the 3rd semester. So that's pretty cool. So I'm working on that with Patrick, and it should be a really cool platform for you guys. I think it's going to really push the limits of your JavaScript knowledge. You'll get some good stuff happening. All right. So Patrick doesn't do a broadcast. That's okay. So hopefully what we'll do is, starting next week, what I might do is teach the class instead of Patrick, and then I'll talk to him about it. And then we'll do a broadcast, and I'll send you a Zoom link and all that stuff. I'll talk to him ahead of time. But so I'll update that stuff for you guys very shortly. Okay, so that's kind of coming up. But the great thing is, when you're involved in a few courses, one of the things we can do is we can create, like I said, a little Linux server for those people who have both courses, and then you can kind of use the Linux server as a way of serving up your files. And we'll talk about a few things we can do today with some downloads, funky downloads we're going to do. Okay, so that's kind of the thing we're doing. So let's get into this. So last week we really talked about release assignment 1. Some of you sent me some email around having trouble around assignment 1. Totally understand. I know that there's some issues. One thing we mentioned was there's really 3 parts of assignment 1. I just want to re-mention those things. One is all the tasks you're going to do, which is the learning part of the assignment 1, which is you're going to try some stuff. The things I've asked you to do are straightforward, I think. I don't think there's much that's too difficult or that you can't look up how to do. So that's the one thing. So assignment 1 should be straightforward. And then the second part of that is actually creating the little PowerPoint. That is a bit of a pain. I've got to be honest. Whenever we do paperwork, any kind of paperwork, any kind of documentation, most developers don't like that, and so they don't want to do it. But the PowerPoint is worth 25 points out of 100. So please make sure you get that done. It's got to be their PowerPoint or Google Slides. And then one of the questions was, well, when I capture all those the commands, do I also have to, can I use that in my video, or do I have to do it live? And that was one of the questions I got. And the answer is that PowerPoint is for you to document, your work. It's not for you to demo live. So you're going to use that. You can use that as a backdrop to show me how you're doing your commands. But I want to see you actually working within the VM. All right. So when you're actually doing the video, which is part 3 of the production, then all you need is that title slide from your slides. I mean, obviously you can use your slides as a backdrop, and you can use your slides to, just like I do here when I use them as a guide. They just kind of guide me along when I'm producing my the recording for you guys, just to make sure I keep on track. So I want you guys to do the same thing. Use your backdrop, your slides, as a way of keeping on track of things. Remember that I need to see slides, so it's not just recording yourself. If you're interested in recording you as well, like yourself, like putting you in the video somehow through some kind of overlay or whatever, you're totally welcome to do that. But the real thing I want is for that video to have your slides, so I can look at the work that you've done, at the same time demo it in the VM. Okay. So some of you are having these permission denied things. Can't open Visual Studio Code. I see that's happening. Some of that is because you need to use super user access. It's really the way you've installed VS Code. So, and we're going to talk about some of these problems we're going to have in a second, right? So super user is a sudo command, and then you put in the password for the account, and then it allows you to do everything. That's how that works. Okay, so try that out, and that should help you. And it really depends on the way you've installed stuff, okay, and what kind of user account you've given yourself. But for the most part, you shouldn't have a problem doing any of the commands, whether you create folders and so on. And be careful where you're doing it. If you're doing it in a system folder, then it's going to ask you whether you're an administrator or not. It's going to ask you whether you to log in and use your sudo command, because if you don't do that, you can wipe away important files and folders and stuff, and that would be very bad. You just have to redo your VM. Okay, so that's what we did last week. We kind of talked about Linux file systems. I released assignment 1, and this week quiz 2 is now released. Again, just like last week, the same rules apply. You get 2 attempts. You're going to have between now and Friday to get her done, right? So anytime between now and Friday at midnight. I think the quiz is straightforward. There's 10 questions this time, but again, and you get 10 minutes. You get 2 attempts, and what it's going to do is really get you to look at the material again. I recommend taking a look at the PowerPoint from last week, and if you've been starting your assignment number 1, I think the quiz will be fairly straightforward. I don't think it's going to be that crazy. Okay, yeah. So yeah, quiz is definitely on Friday. Your assignment is also due Friday, but anytime between now and Friday, you can get the quiz done. It shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes, okay, to get it done. So we're going to talk about some additional commands today, and maybe we'll carry this into tomorrow. I'm not going to probably produce another PowerPoint. It may just be this one. So there's 58 slides, but most of the slides are duplicates, or they just show you how to do something. There's also some slides that we have here for reference, so you can quickly look up the utilities and system commands if you want to do that. The quiz basically covers last week, so anything that we did last week with the PowerPoint, that's what the quiz covers. Okay, so it doesn't cover anything outside of stuff that we haven't talked about, and I'll try and retool the quizzes as we go forward so that they're the same, that they kind of cover the the stuff that we've talked about from the previous week as much as possible. Okay, so that's that. Is it yet visible? Oh, it should be. Let's make it visible if it's not. So thank you for that question. So quizzes, you see I have all the quizzes here. And quiz 2, it's not visible. So let's make it visible now. There we go. That should be available to you now. And you know what we'll do? We'll include it in your content area so you can access it easily. And here, I'll just add it as an existing item, right? So we'll say it's quiz 2. There we go. So quiz 2, I'll just put that just above, underneath the lesson 3. So you'll see that come up in eCentennial if you have a chance to take a look at that now. Okay? So that is what we're doing today. So first, what I'd like to do is spin up our VM. So let's do that. It's just like we normally do. I'm going to spin up my VM here. And we're still keeping the same settings. One thing I've done in between sessions is I've done an update on my files, so that way, you know, just in case you have any system files that need to be updated, try and do that before you come in to the next session if there's some kind of important file update or whatever, so it doesn't come up and bother you during the session that we're here. Okay, I'm going to also start and see how it normally works. So hopefully this will start up as normal. And when we do, I'm keeping the scaled version of our VM. There we go. I just make it easier for you guys to see, not really because you should run it this way. But I find that it's, I don't care about the resolution necessarily. I really care about, can you see it in the video, right? All right, so VS Code, eh? And we did a couple of installations. Today we're going to do another one in prep for what we're going to be doing for the second half of semester. I'm going to talk about a couple of commands that we're going to start looking into. By the way, one of the things I talked about earlier this semester was the need for version control. And like I mentioned, for those people who are following along, Linux has Git built into it, just like Mac OS, which is awesome. I think that's something that Windows would benefit from having built in, some kind of version control system. I believe it did have at one point. But so if I go back here to terminal, just like last time, like I said, and if I type in Git, so G-I-T, Git, it's pronounced, and if I press enter, it'll show you that it does indeed have a Git command. Clear, remember what clear does? It clears the screen, some review. So if I do git -- version, right now what I have is 2.26.2. That's the current version of Git. If your version somehow is different than my version, then, and there's also a newer version out, let's pull up, I'll just pull up Chrome here for a second. And let's go to git-scm.com. git-scm.com, and you can see that there's a latest version for Git is 2.27.0. 2.27.0. So it's a later version than the one we have. And you're going to say to me, most people should ask at this point, what's the difference? And I'm sure there's going to be very few differences, just stability. But you can always look at the release notes. Git always has release notes, and it talks about you know, some things that they've added in, and so on. Any kind of fixes they have. Anytime you have as a developer, you want to definitely include any release notes, you know, for things that you've changed. These are all the different things that have been fixed up since that's the last version. So you can see that this is the update since version 2.26. So there's some additional things that they've done. You can see that they continuously working to improve Git, and I think that's pretty good. They have a lot of fixes and additions, so I think, you know, it's probably a worthwhile download. So okay, cool. So we know that Git can be downloaded and improved, updated, if you will. How do we do that when we have a Linux environment? For Windows, it's literally just download and run. Is it the same for Linux? How does it work? So let's click on this downloads for Linux. Again, this is just a tool that I'm downloading. And you can see that we have some installation options. Okay, take a look at this. We have yum install, because we're using Fedora Linux, and this is on the command line. Yum install, I like yum, it was pretty cool. But now they've moved to something called DNF, right? So DNF is the newer way to do it, and you can say up to Fedora 21. You know, we're not at Fedora 21. What Fedora version are we at? We're at 32. So we need to do it this way. DNF, I think it'll still work backwards this way too. DNF install Git. So let's try that at the command prompt. All right, so here we're back to here. So DNF install Git. And when we do that, it's going to say the command has to be run with super user privileges. And this is something that you might be getting as well when you try this kind of stuff. Can't do this unless you're a you know, a super user. So how do we do that? Well, I use sudo, all right, or sudo. Everyone pronounces this differently. Sudo is fine. You can do the same thing. So DNF install Git. You just add the command after the sudo, all right? And then when I press enter, it'll say, we trust that you have received the usual lecture from the local system administrator. It just usually boils down to these things. You know, and guess what? I'm the administrator. But what this tells me is, once I use this, I have the power to destroy my machine, right? So I'm going to put my password in there, and if I typed it right, then what it's going to do is it's going to go up and download from this distribution, the typical distribution that's out there. It's going to go up and download the latest version of Git, okay? And not only download it, but install it inside of my system. So it'll do it automatically for me. So this is complete. Okay, now we have to shut down this terminal and then relaunch it. Typically that's how it works. And if everything went well, sometimes it won't, or there might be an additional step to do. But if I do a git ---- version now, then we should expect to see a bit different version. But guess what? My version says 2.26.2, which is the exact same version it was before. Okay, so yours might be a previous version of 2.26.2, but the latest version says that it's 2.27.0. That's the version I should have, and that's the first part. First part is downloading it, but it didn't quite work. As an example, okay. So why do you think? And by the way, you can see that there's different ways of installing it for all these things, right? So why do you think, and just putting it out there, that it didn't do the job I asked it to do? I mean, I installed Git, so I'm not sure why. Why would you think it didn't work? Like, I should have the latest version, not 2.26, but 2.27. So anyone have an idea? You have to stop at the last version. There is a separate command that will do that. Exactly. And Steve, tell us the separate command, please, since you're the expert. And so there's a couple things. So one is, you know, one thing we download, right? And sometimes what will happen is when we're updating DNF. So let's take a look at DNF and what this does. Remember we talked about utilities, and this is one of the utilities for, it's a package manager, DNF. Okay, so let's pull this together. So let's look at DNF. So we'll say man, right? And we'll say DNF. And let's see what it gives us. So it says DNF is the DNF command reference, right? It's the next upcoming major version of Yum, package manager for RPM-based Linux distribution. That's us, right? It says it roughly maintains CLI compatibility with Yum and defines a strict API for extensions and plugins. Okay, so that's what it does. So these are good things. Return values: 0, operation was successful, an error occurred is 1, 3, an unknown handheld issue. Available commands are alias, check, clean, group, and so on. So I can say, I can do something like DNF, and then I can clean, I can downgrade, I can upgrade. So install is what we just did. I installed it. And then if we go down, you can see that there is upgrade, DNF upgrade. So if I did that, let's try that one instead. So quit. And if I did that, if I said sudo DNF upgrade git, okay? And if I did that properly and put in my my password for it, right? Then what we're going to get, it says nothing to do, complete. But is it complete? Whenever I see that, I'm always like very, because it's like, you know, it does one of these, right? So you can see that this is no good. I can also do sudo DNF update. So let me talk about this. What does update do? This is interesting. What it does is all the dependencies are resolved, but we also need to have the latest version of the stream, because what happens is that this you know, distribution, right? The distribution that we have is based on the version of Linux that I've kind of installed. Okay, so it says nothing to do, update, everything is good. So that didn't work. So, and if I just did DNF, so if I said DNF upgrade, this is a long command. sudo dnf upgrade. This is a long command, and what it's going to do without me even touching everything, it's going to go through all the stuff, and it's going to upgrade my entire system, right? If there's anything that I want to specifically do, right? So let's do some other commands. We'll say man dnf, right? Let's take a look at other options for DNF, right, to get this thing going. Okay, group info install list, right? Mark module provides reinstall. That could be something we want to try, a reinstall, right? Have a download of 364 that came up. Yeah, I'm sure you do, right? So remove repo list, right? Search shell swap, update info, upgrade minimal, upgrade to, and so on. So let's try reinstall and see what happens. So we'll do a DNF reinstall git and see what happens. Okay. Again, don't worry about it, right? Sudo dnf reinstall git. Okay. And now what it's going to do is it's going to reinstall is like a removal and an update at the same time. It says, hey, this is pretty big. Oh, look, what it's actually accessing is this. So this is why we're getting that size. Notice what it says. Our size is 368K, but the architecture is x86-64, and the latest version that it's seeing in the repository that I'm looking at is 2.62.2, and that's why I'm getting this 2.26.2 version, right? So if I go yes, then it's going to download the latest version. It'll clean up, and now it should say the latest version. So I'll say if I go git minus version, again 2.26.2, because that's the version of my latest repo, right? Now, so it says use the preferred package manager and blah blah blah. But one of the things that it doesn't tell you here is a lot of times what we want to do is we want to update the kind of like the distribution, right? And sometimes what happens is our distribution, my where this thing is pointing to when I do DNF install, is something else that's happening. So if I look that up, so update DNF repository, right? So DNF command reference, and it says so DNF. Here's the DNF command reference, and if you notice, this is on Git, right? And this is DNF. So there's two different tabs here, right? And if you look through, it tells you how all this works. So distro sync, right? But what we want to do is we want to so repo info. This is a kind of a more of an advanced thing if you want to look it up. So it's DNF repo list -v. More detailed information like like this. It also tells us we can do a repo query command, and what we want to do is really update our repo or the place we're looking, right? So to the latest thing. So again, we may have to look this up to do it properly. All right. So repo list, right? And so it lists a repo is like a repository of where all the packages come from, right? So that's what we want to kind of do, right? So going back, so if I go down to this, and if I go, sudo dnf, right, repo lists, then it'll show us the repo, all the repos where we're looking. So we're looking at Fedora. Fedora's Fedora 32, Fedora Cisco, Fedora module. These are all the places we're looking for updates and so on, updates modular. And what we want to do is we want the repo list for what we're looking at for Git. So again, we can say dnf git repo. Sure, I'll select this one. And so sometimes what happens is it says software management. DNF, do we even have that? And I think we have to add that in as a repo. Because what happens is if we're not looking at the right stuff, right, the right repository, this isn't it. But what we want to do It says, see, adding, enabling, and disabling a DNF repository. So think about DNF. Whenever you think DNF, think about it as a package manager, a way of getting a package from the internet and then updating a package, right? So we're gonna have to do this. Git is a good example of a package we want to get to, but our repository is doing exactly what we're telling it to. It's looking at a specific spot and then doing this. So it says, look at it, it says installing Git, right? So there's one. And then a lot of times what it does, it says, here's the command installing on Linux. If you want to install the basic Git tools on Linux via a binary installer, you can generally do so through the package management tool. Here's installing it on so this is apt. This is for Ubuntu Linux, and this is for us. Notice it says git-all. Let's see if we try that instead. Don't think that's going to make a difference because it's really depending on the distribution. So we can try that too. We can say that, and I'll put it over here, and then I'll check the chat, see if you guys have found it faster than me. But basically, you do sudo dnf install git all. Let's see what that does for us, right? If it does anything else, and I guarantee you it's probably going to be the exact same that we already have, which is the latest version. Oh, okay, total download size 10 megs. Okay, this is interesting. So git CVS, git UI, git subtree, git SVN, git web. Right, that's pretty big. This is all the different stuff that it includes: email, git web, Perl, and a bunch of other dependencies. Right. But one thing you want to see is the latest version. Look, even if we did this, you can see that it's 2.6.2. It's 2.6.2. All this stuff is looking at the same version that we're looking at already, right? Okay, so I'm going to say no to this because I don't feel like, installing all that stuff because there's nothing that's different from my version compared to that version, right? And that's the one I want. Remember that with DNF, so if I go man DNF, you can see that the command is this, and if I click on if I look at install, so I want to do man dnf install. Let's try that because you can do sub manuals as well. I think man dnf install. Then you can see that I don't think it allows me to do. Let me just go to the install piece right here. So install. Here's the DNF reference. Which is really cool to have all this stuff. The erase command, and I want to do the install command on DNF. So this is like the actual manual for DNF online is what I'm looking at. Okay, I just looked it up because it tells us how to do it. So DNF install a local RPM, as an example, and I want to look at for a specific version because sometimes it allows you to add in an option at a particular version. So, and I don't think it shows me what I'm looking for. The package called Tito downloads a specific spot for it, right? As well as saw the latest available version of the package. So, so --best. Okay, let's try that. So, so we'll do that. So we'll say, good. Well, we're on the wrong thing. Let's just go. Let's move into my. I always, I don't like being in here. I'll go into documents just to make sure that I'm not going to kill anything. We also have workspace that I created from last day. Let's try this out. So we'll say DNF. So sudo DNF, and like it says here, --best. Let's try and pull it out so you can see it's this part right here. --best install and then git. All right. I don't think it's going to give me a better version. I bet you any money that I'm just not pointing at the right location. There it is. It says that's the latest one that it's pointing to because that's the package that it's found. So it's not going to install it until it finds the later package. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Sometimes what Git does, if you look at Git, so git-scm.com. So let's go back to that one. It says that the latest version is 2.27.0. That's another way to do it. Actually, it clicked on this thing and downloaded it here, the gzip version. Okay, so that is not going to help us. And the reason why this isn't going to help us is even if I kind of show this in the folder. So let's click, show in folder. Then I get this this gzip version of the file. Gzip is a compressed version. We're going to talk about gzip today, right? And I can extract here if I want. So it's going to unzip it, equivalent. And then I'm looking at the files. Here it is, right? Here's the files, right? So this is like me doing manual work and getting it manually done, right? So this is what I'm doing here. So remember that Dnf install allows me to target a location, right? So git-2.27.0 would be the location of the folder. By the way, great thing about this is we can always rename the folder to whatever we want. So I can say if I don't want to remember git-2.27.0, I can just rename this to git latest, right? And that'll be the name of the folder inside my downloads folder. Okay, so remember what we did last time. We can simply do what we said before. So if I go back to my DNF command reference, I can simply say, well, I want to go into downloads and I want to look at this, but guess what? It's using RPM, and I don't have an RPM. I don't have a a folder like this at all because that's the way I have to get it. So again, one thing you can also do is I'd love to be able to do that. To sudo dnf install git-2.27, it won't do it properly, unfortunately, because that's the latest version that we have. So what if I wanted to, so here's another thing you can try. Install git-2.27, and we can say something like Fedora Linux. And something like this, one thing I always like to think about, so Linux from scratch, git 2.27.0, whenever I always think about this, it says, here's the package information, right? An MD5. And now it tells me this other thing. Here's my download. Here's my estimated disk space, 318 megs, right? And then it says, here's the the other things, git dependencies. We can do this curl command, right? And so on. And then you can do your installation. It gives you step-by-step installation on how to make this work. Okay, so am I going to go through this right now with you? No, we could totally do this if you wanted to install. So first of all, you have to make the folder. Making, what it does is it creates a kind of like a make is a little utility that basically builds the installation. And then what it does is once you make it, you'll have this install.html file that you can double click to make it work. All right, so that's how one thing you can make it go. And it tells you some explicit information on how to build it from scratch instead of you downloading it with your package manager. Okay, so that's what this does, this little link. And by the way, you could download and install things manually anytime you want. It's just a matter of following a process. However, I highly don't recommend to try this on your own, as an example, without trying it on a test machine, because if something happens and it doesn't work, you can mess up your pathing and all that stuff. So remember that you can always make a copy of your machine to try this out, but a lot of times you can get like step-by-step instructions just like this, to kind of try and install things manually. Okay, so that's kind of one way of doing it. It says git download for Linux. Here's another one. There's another packages, git download for Linux. You can see that there's RPM, so let's take a look at this link. And this is the last thing we'll try. And what this will do is maybe what it'll allow us to do is download a version that is an RPM as opposed to a, so let's go down to Fedora. So here's Fedora 32. Right? And you can see this is what we have. Look at 2.26.0, 2.26.2, and that's why a lot of times we're getting this this version of 2.26. whatever, because a lot of these repositories haven't been updated for us, at least for our system, with 2.27.0. Okay, and that's why we're getting this thing, because everything else is 2.26.2 everywhere on the web so far that I've seen. Unless you try and download it and build it from scratch yourself, I'm not going to do that. It's a trial and error sometimes process, even if you follow the, everything that it's asking. And I highly recommend against it, unless you absolutely need to have the bleeding edge, which you and I don't need. as an example. Okay, so I'm just showing you what it would be like if you downloaded a package. So, okay, let's try another one. So that's Git. We did upgrade it, but we upgraded it a little bit. I'm going to get rid of this because I don't need it. So again, we're going to trash it, move to trash. That's where it goes. So what about something else? One of the things we're going to be doing at the end of semester on the COMP301 course is downloading and installing. Actually, we'll probably do this a lot earlier. Is downloading and installing npm and Node. So if you go to Nodejs as an example, if you look at nodejs.org, this one. Black Lives Matter, and I think this is a really great message, guys. This week we've been hit with a lot of controversial and different issues that are truly important in our time, and that's why these guys at Nodejs, I'm super proud of these guys to put Black Lives Matter on this. It's huge, and it's something we should take seriously. But anyways, let's go down to this. If you notice that it's on a timer. A lot of times, a lot of this stuff will just go. But what we want to do is we want to go to the latest where it says download Node.js, which you want to do. There's 2 versions of Node.js. So what is Node.js, first of all? What am I getting you to do? Node.js is like JavaScript on the back end, the server side. Okay, so that's what it is. Instead of running PHP or something like that, you can run JavaScript now everywhere. You can run JavaScript on the front end, JavaScript for your database, MongoDB, and JavaScript for the back end, Node.js, right? And Node.js has some great little utilities we can run when we're building apps for the web. Okay, so notice that there is a bunch of different installers, and there's different installs. So one is for ARM, and the other one is for Linux binaries for x64. Well, it's definitely not ARM. That's the type of processor we're talking about. So it's not this. Those are for smaller machines, like some phones and some IoT devices. But definitely 64-bit support is what we want. So we click on there. And again, it gives us this .xz file, right? And what is a .xz file? .xz file, right, is a compressed file. So this is not what we're looking for, right? It's not what we're looking for. So is there a way of downloading this Node.js, right, as an example, with the command line, right? And I want to get the current, not the LTS build, but the current build, because see this one here, this version 12, right? And if I go open this in folder, show in folder, and if I open this up and if I extract it here, I'm not going to get an RPM. I'm going to get something that I have to go and build, right? Notice this says, here's npm. I can download this node or whatever. I want it to install properly. That's what I want it to do. And the way to install this properly is to use DNF. So let's try DNF install node and see what happens, right? So, and by the way, a lot of times we get, it's pretty simple. If you can remember the name of the package you want to download, then we can use DNF for this. So again, sudo DNF install node, right? And if I press enter, maybe it's going to find the thing that I'm looking for. Maybe not. Maybe it's going to be node.js. Maybe it's going to be something else. Let's see. And worst case scenario, right? Okay, this is cool. So these are the dependencies. Tell me what we're going to download. So it says the version of Node is 0.3.2-27. Okay, so this is wrong. It's clearly wrong because the version that I'm going to get is like not 14. It's like 0.3. So this is not right. So the answer is no whenever you get something like this. So let's try node.js. Let's try that. So again, this is just off the top of my head, right? So sudo, without looking it up, sudo dnf install, right? And then I can try node.js and see if that's found. If it's not, right, then again, we can go back and we can take a look at the files that are found. And no, that's not it. So let's go. And don't panic. One of the things, the beautiful thing about this is we have total control of the stuff we're downloading. So again, we want to download Node for Fedora Linux, right? And it talks about how to do this, how to install latest Node.js on Fedora. All right, so let's do that. This is a great little tutorial. I'm sure we can probably figure out how to do it. And it says Node.js. Okay, set up the DNF repository. Okay, now this is interesting. look what it does. It says, so these are the commands we need. And look what it does. It actually sets up, for the latest release. This is the latest release we want to do. So there's a couple commands. The other command we want to do is curl. All right. So there's two parts. One is we want to download the latest version of GCC C++ and make. So we want to make this thing. We want to get it here. So we can literally just copy a lot of times these commands. So copy, Control C. And then what we want to do is shift back to this, and we want to paste. So again, we can just paste the command, right? Notice how that's done, and press enter. And then it's going to ask me if it might ask you for your password if your super user rights have expired. That's what's going to happen. But otherwise, it'll just download everything you need. So that's the first thing it does. Downloads our dependencies because that's what we want. And GCC C++ is a compiler for C++. Yay. And then I'm going to use curl. Curl is another way of getting stuff. Another kind of package manager, kind of. But what I'm doing is I'm adding in this RPM node source for the setup of node 14, which is where we're at. So I'm going to grab this one now, copy. Again, I'm here at, all I did was I just searched for how to install latest node for Fedora. That's what I did, right? And then, again, just paste that one in, that command, press enter. It's going to install this stuff. And now it says we can do a sudo yum install yarn. It's recommending how to do this. But what we really want to do is this sudo yum install yum. Remember what yum was? Yum was a previous command that is for the previous version of our system. We're using the new one, which is this one, sudo dnf install node, right? So let's do that one. So again, copy, go back to this one, right click and paste, right? And then press enter. And then we can, as long as we're within a reasonable time frame, we can download and install the latest version of Node, right, onto our command line. And it says, hey, are you sure it's 45 megabytes? The answer is yes for this one. And again, to check this, Node is at 14.4. This is the one we want. That's not that 0.31 that we downloaded before through DNF. So press yes, it'll just download this stuff. By the way, your installation might be a little bit slower than mine, or more, or quicker than mine, I don't know. And it says, is this okay? Sure, download that too. By the way, you can also do the -y, so it doesn't answer, it doesn't ask you any kind of input. It'll just automatically install stuff. These are all the dependencies for Node.js that it's going to download and install right now for me. Notice it's also installing things like Python 2.7, so 2.7 is what it is, and a bunch of other things, a bunch of other dependencies. Hey, it's done. And the way to check it once it's done is just type node -- version, if I'm not wrong. Now we have node 14.4.0. Are you with me? So I'm showing you how to download packages, a lot of popular packages from the web, and you're going to need to do this for stuff that we're going to be doing moving forward. Node.js is kind of a staple package that we want to download. It's installing, I know. It's going to take a little bit more time for you. Okay, so this is what I did. I did a node -- version to check if you follow this thing. And just to make it simple, because this is the one that I put in, I'm just going to copy this, and I'll put it up on eCentennial as a link to install Node for Fedora. So just again, we'll just go in here, and I'll go new link. So for people who are watching this video later who couldn't make it today, did I actually copy this properly? No. Let's go back to, can I even copy it from here? I don't know if it allows me to. Copy. I don't know if I can copy across my VM. Can I? I cannot. That sucks. Okay. Usually you can, but we'll just type it in. techadmin.net install latest Node.js on Fedora. techadmin.net, right? techadmin.net /install-latest-node.js. Okay, so we'll do that. install dash latest dash Node.js dash on dash Fedora. And there you go. Hey, I was actually able to remember this. Okay, now I'll put this in here and we should be fine. There it is. And this is install Node.js on Fedora. There we go. Okay. Open up as an external resource. So now you guys have this up online. And if you ever want to, you can go through this. So then this is what I would do. If I wanted to find a package that I wanted to install, and sometimes you will, again, you can look up some installation videos on how to do it. It's not a big deal. A lot of times we can work around it, and then you have the latest version. So hopefully you guys are with me. That sounds about right. 45 megs in that array. It was pretty big for me too. Like if you notice when I go back, it was 45 megs. So yeah, that does sound around right. Still not that big. 45 megs nowadays is like fairly small compared to what it used to be. Okay, so now that I have this, I should be able to try this now, npm ---- version, because Node comes with something called npm, the Node package manager, right? So you should be able to do this. So follow me. Can you do it? Should work for you, right? 6.14.5 is what you should have, just like me, all right, or something thereabouts. Okay, cool. So now we can use npm, commands, which is really cool. So try this. Now this is probably going to fail. If I did npm install yarn and then -g, okay, so npm install yarn, like as in string yarn, or a thing that you would use yarn -g. Try this and then press enter. It might give you an error like this, which is saying, hey, you don't have access to do this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. So what do we need to do? Sudo npm install yarn -g. And if you did that, it might ask me for my password, and then it'll install nicely. Yeah? So any kind of package I want to install, so that's a yarn is actually a Node package, all right? So that's like specifically for me to install stuff, right? Let's install a couple of other things just to try it. It doesn't mean anything to you right now. Don't worry about it. It's not even relevant to the course. I'm just trying to get you to understand how to use the command line to install different packages and how to use kind of popular packages out there like Node.js. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's try sudo npm install. We'll try light-server -g. -g is actually a global, so we'll install light server in the global namespace. Let's try this. And if I did this and press enter, then it'll install something called light server, which is like a little mini server that you can test with here on Linux. And it takes some time to do it. There's got quite a few files to download and install. Looks like it's working great though, and I'm really happy when I see this kind of stuff, even with the warnings that are coming up with deprecated warning. This is kind of the way we do it when we install light server. Okay. Getting bash node command not found. That means that hasn't been installed yet. And sudo npm install light-server -g. That's right. Thank you. And that's then I'll just go over that again for the command. So I did these commands. I said sudo npm install light-server. I also did a sudo npm install yarn -g. A couple of those commands. Let's do one more. Just again, things that you probably will need in the future. npm install nodemon as an example. So it's node monitor -g, right? And again, if I just did this, I'm going to get an error. It's going to say wah. Chances are it's going to error out in a second, like this, right? However, if I go to, let's clear the screen first. If I use sudo, because I'm changing the command line, so that's why it's asking me for super user access. So if I do something like sudo, npm install npm install nodemon -g, like this, right? Then you can see that now it's not going to fail again. It's going to work. So sudo super user do. All right, that's what it kind of works. And a lot of times we can solve our problems with super user do or sudo. All right, but be careful because it can also create a whole bunch of whack of problems that you weren't expecting. Okay, so be cognizant of that as well. All right, so we got a couple of commands we put in here. Well, we wouldn't be complete unless we did a bit of a test to see if all this stuff worked that we installed. So let's see how this works. So let's bring up, so here again, if you look at the path, right, we're in home Tom. Let's go into documents, right? Documents, right? And we can see that we're in workspace. Here's workspace. So, you can see that that's where I want to work within. But remember, what I want to do is bring up code. I could type in code there, or I can go here and just drop Visual Studio Code in there. And I want to work within my workspace, that workspace folder. Notice that my workspace folder came up. But if it didn't, what you can do, I'm just going to close this off. Let's say, for example, I don't have this folder up. Then your Visual Studio Code should come up like this. I just closed it. You can close the folder, which is what I did with Visual Studio Code. But if it should come up like this if you've never done it before. I could click Open Folder here, or I could go File, Open Folder here, or Control-K, Control-O. That's the shortcut keys for that. And when I do that, it'll take me back to our file manager, right? Nautilus is what it's called, the Nautilus file manager. And I want to work within Workspace. So I want to just double click in there so you can see I'm in Documents, Workspace. And then I'm going to press OK. So now Visual Studio Code is going to show me that same scene. So I'm in the Workspace folder. This is my little text editor. By the way, for people who are going to be working with me on JavaScript this semester, you're going to be very familiar using Visual Studio Code. We may not do it inside of our Linux environment, but it's going to be the exact same. All right, so here's our workspace. Let's make a simple web page, right? So we can play around with this for later on. Okay, so again, I'm going to make a new folder. Let's make a new folder first. We're going to call this folder scripts. Are you with me? Okay, so again, so we have a couple things here. All we have right now is we've made inside the workspace folder, we have another folder called scripts, and I did that by pressing this button right here. Okay, new folder. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to just click somewhere down in here and then click this new file, right? A new file. I want to call this index.html, right? There's my index.html file. Yeah. It says my color of index.html has been updated as the theme dark plus has semantic highlighting enabled. Okay, I'm good. I like that. Excellent. There's my index.html. We want a simple HTML page. How do we do it? Does anyone know, first of all, how to do it? You should have learned this in your JavaScript course, in your HTML course, in your CSS course, some course. Did you learn how to do it yet? Doc type. Nah, that's too long. That's too long. It's like this, guys. Look, HTML:5, and then press tab. And then it's like, bam, it'll give you this starter, right? Okay, so what this does, if I undo, if I press Control Z, right, or Z, I come back to this, HTML:5. And notice when I type the ending, once I type the last character, then it enables this thing, and this is something called Emmet. And this is why I love Visual Studio Code as an editor across every platform, because it gives you shortcuts on how to create HTML. So if I click this, right, you can see I got all this. Let's name this Hello World really quickly. I know this has nothing to do with our course, but it is going to help us with some of the commands we're going to do today, because we need something to work with. So I'm going to call this Hello World. Right, there's my Hello World command. It gives me my viewport meta, and notice I can show or hide the workspace. I only care about the file, this index.html file, and you can see that this little dot up here means that it's not saved. Press Control S, it'll turn into an X. Control S means save, of course, so you can see that that's saved. If it wasn't, if I make changes, it'll go back to a little dot in a second, okay? So here in the body, here's some shortcut. Ready for the shortcut again? Here it goes. I'm going to do a div tag with a, inside the div tag, I want to put an H1 tag. And my H1 tag is going to say hello world. Oh yeah, this is pretty simple, right? Notice if I have this set up like this, so div greater than sign H1, curly braces, hello world, and if I click on this link up here, just click onto it, bam, you got a div tag with an h1 tag inside of it, right? And you can do the same thing if you wanted to undo that. You can always go back and add to this. Let's say, for example, I want that h1 tag to be something like first heading, have an idea of first heading. I can just press hashtag, kind of first heading, and if I click onto it now, like this, you can see now I have an h1 with an idea of first heading, and oh man, what the heck did it do? It actually put this at the end. That's not what I wanted, but that's okay, because I can always fix this by doing something that looks like this, right? So that might be okay. Div tag, oh yeah, and that's the reason why that's happening is because that has to be inside of it. I don't know if I can do that way. Oh, I did it, yeah, there it is. Okay, so that is the shortcut key for that. So you can really get clicking fast. So that's first div tag. If I wanted to change this to, let's say, my main, as an example, you can see that it would change that to the main. So that's more semantic than what we had before. And let's add a script. So just to make it really simple, again, I'm within time so far for this one. In my scripts folder, I want to add another folder, another file. So I'm going to click on scripts this time, and then click this new file. You need to click on scripts to make this happen, or else it'll go somewhere out here. So scripts, I'm going to click this new file button, and then inside the new file, I want to make a new script called app.js. There's our JavaScript stuff that you're doing this semester, okay? And I want this JavaScript file to run automatically when it's connected to my index.html. So what I'm going to do really, really quickly is set this up with something called an IFI. And for those people who probably don't know, you probably don't know what an IFI is. It stands for an immediately invoked, oh God, I can't type it all today, function expression. Yeah, that's what it is. And so what this means, it's like a self-executing anonymous function. That's what it does, self-executing. So it runs automatically. And it looks really ugly, like this. Okay? And you're going to look at this and go, what the heck is this? And you're going to, I'm not going to tell you, it's not hacking. Okay? This is not hacking. This is literally a real expression that you can use in with JavaScript. And what it does is it says, hey, this function is anonymous, and these two brackets down here automatically execute the function. So anything that's inside of this function gets executed. And you're going to say, why are you doing it that way, Tom? I'll explain in a second. You're going to make a new function called start. And underneath that, we're going to use the window object. So we're going to say window, right, dot add event listener. And we're going to call, when the window loads, we're going to call the start function. There we go. So this is doubly ensured that it's going to run start. The start function is going to call it when the window finishes loading. Window means like when the page finishes loading. Okay, so then what I want to do is I want to do a little console command, console log, and I want to say something like, app started, right? Yeah, there you go. So that's a little, 2-line piece of code or whatever. It's not a lot of lines here of code. But this is an IFI, and if you're going to take JavaScript with me starting next week, we're going to be talking about, no, we're not going to learn hacking, that's for sure. But we're definitely going to be talking about an immediately invoked function expression, which you should know about by the time you're finished JavaScript with me. Okay, so what that is, I use them all the time, but think about this, and you should think about this, as a closure. So anything that's inside of there can't escape. It's like a black hole in some ways, unless I want things to be exposed, so it's not exposed on the cache, on the browser cache immediately. You'd have to kind of, anything that I do in here is kind of enclosed. Okay, so we'll talk about that later. So are you with me? Do you got this part going on? So I got two files. I've got my index.html, which is pretty much like nothing. It's just this, right? And my app.js inside of my scripts folder, which is just this. Are you with me? By the way, I'm going to put this up on GitHub in a few minutes and share that with you on eCentennial. right? We're going to do that. All right, so cool. Cool, I like this. So far, so good. We're all good, right? Now we need to connect our app.js to my index.html. And the best way to do that would be at the bottom or just before your body tag. So you're going to say, start typing script. And you're going to do source. So :src. Notice there's a clickable link here again. We're going to click onto it. It's going to tell me where do I want to look. Well, I want to look at /scripts/app.js. You see it gives me a little link, and that's me connecting my app.js to my index.html. Remember that if you've ever done any kind of index.html, I'm saving it. What index.html is for the web application. Think about it as the manifest that connects all your scripts together. And we're going to do this later on with Python, right? Which is going to be very exciting. So all I've done is just added a little script on line 13 that connects my app.js to my index.html. Okay, cool. Now to test it, we just downloaded a file with Node.js. I want to use light-server to test my file, and it's going to launch my little website, little web link over here, this little site that I made. And it's going to synchronize my development automatically with it. Okay, so I'm going to use my built-in terminal. Again, you can get to the terminal by going to terminal, right? And oh yeah, this is nice. By going to control backtick. There we go. Terminal should actually be terminal. Yeah, so there's control backtick. So control backtick actually toggles the terminal window on and off of Visual Studio Code, so you have one editor to work within. Okay, and then what I can do with this is I can just simply type, if I did it right, light-server. And if I did it right, it's going to look at my files inside my workspace and launch my default browser in the window like this. Okay, so you can see it says hello world, and it's running a little server on localhost 3000 inside of my little VM. Cannot get. Well, the only reason why you're getting cannot get is because index.html is not exposed on the root of your you don't have an index.html, or you've put your index.html in the wrong place. Okay, all right, so what I want to do now is take a look at our console inside the browser. So don't worry about if it doesn't work. It's not really the exercise here anyway. I want to go inspect, and inside my browser I want to look at console, and we should see app started. I also have this other fail. It says fail to load resource with a status of 404. Why? Because I don't have a favicon. Okay, don't worry about that. Who cares? No, light server command not found. That shouldn't be the case. If you installed everything properly, it should work. We're going to fix that in a sec. Okay, so yeah. So notice this is app started. This is a good sign. And sometimes when I work on JavaScript stuff, what I want to do is I want to take my toolbar, and you can adjust it, right, to where you want, right? So it says show console sidebar. I can choose not to or not. That's a sidebar that you can launch. You guys should know how to do this. It also gives us where we want to see it, so I can look at the top. That's kind of the top file, the context. If I click this, it can give you other information about my debugging. And it also, if you click this little ellipses on the side here, you can dock to the side, which is my default. You can dock to the bottom, to the left, right? And you can also unlock in a separate window. I'm going to dock to the bottom, so it looks going to look like this. Again, I got that from my little ellipses right here. Okay, so now you can see that that is cool. So why is this awesome? And you're going to be like, okay, Tom, thanks so much for all that, but what does it have to do with anything? The price of oranges, right? Well, why is this awesome? Because the thing with this is when I make a change, so here, I'm going to just do this side by side. So here I've got my web browser here on the left, on the right, I'm sorry, and I've got my editor on the left, my web browser on the right, and I'm just going to toggle off my my terminal then if I want to change my thing to something else other than hello world, let's say, for example, I want to change to goodbye world, goodbye, right? Cruel world, something's bad, you know, I don't know. And if I press save, as soon as I press save, then what happens is, bam, your web browser gets automatically updated because it's synchronized with your editor. That's the way to work when you do web development, in my opinion. All right, because any change I make, for example, if I go back to what it was before, so if I undo that change, and if I press save, just when I press save here, I'm not doing anything else, press save, and all of a sudden, bam, my web browser is updated, right? And why? Because one of the challenges we have when it comes to working with the web is we have to wait until we have to kind of hit refresh every single time, and if we forget to hit refresh, we're like, why isn't it working? But of course it's already working, you just haven't hit refresh. Here, my little utility, light-server, is hitting refresh for me every time I save. And you can see that inside of the terminal. If you look at the terminal gives you a history of what's happening. It reloads the browsers every single time I change my index.html or my script. It kind of looks at the entire folder for me. And we're going to do this together when I'm with you guys starting next week. So don't worry about it. Don't panic. If you can't get it to work, we'll troubleshoot with you on a Windows machine, which is where we're going to be doing this kind of stuff anyway. So the same thing goes with our little app.js in JavaScript. If I change anything in my app.js, right, if I say something like Tom's app started, right, and if I press save, you can see now down in here inside of the console, it automatically updates this part too. So anything that I do fires or triggers right away. Okay, cool. So now we have some files we can work with that are real life files, so we can do stuff with, and we can actually do some of the work in Linux that we want. But and we don't have to have this server up. So I'm just going to kill the server right now. So we just can let this go. And the way to do this is to release this resources, Control-C, just to stop this thing. And I even can exit out of the terminal. There it is. As well as exit out of VS Code. So we're just going to exit out of VS Code and go back to our console here. Swim back to our file. So CD. And we want to go to, like we said before, /documents/workspace, right? Oh. Documents. Where am I? Did I not specify? Documents. Oh yeah. /. I'll be okay. Documents/workspace. And you can see now we're in there. We can see index.html and scripts. There we go. Okay. So now we have this. We can use some of the commands that I want to follow up with you guys for the next hour. My index.html is the right place. Why isn't it getting it in the terminal? Even mine too. I know, guys. I'm sorry. I know I went fast. Oh, hey, because I went so fast, I want to put this up on GitHub so you can compare my code with your code. That's important. Let's try that out. So GitHub. Oh yeah, we're going to do this going forward. So I'm going to go to github.com/Centennial College, where I'll be sharing my code with you. So this link here is the Centennial College GitHub link that I use for all my repositories, right? So I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to put this inside of eCentennial. So again, we'll make a new link. So we'll say this is the Centennial, or we'll call it the course GitHub link. Course GitHub link. It's for all of my stuff in Centennial, but it doesn't matter. You can have it like everything else. So there it is. It's up on eCentennial now. You'll have a link to GitHub. And this is where I'm going to share all my code with you going forward in the course and in other courses too, right? So I'm just going to put this kind of right here underneath this install Node.js on Fedora link. So there it is. And the way GitHub works is we set up a new repository. We click new. And I recommend, guys, if you haven't done it already, sign up for GitHub. I think I've asked you guys to do this, but please do this some point soon because we're going to need it for the second half of the semester. I'm going to click on new. I'm going to add in a new repository that I'm going to call COMP301 Summer 2020. less than 3. And we'll say, this is where we're going to have a repository we're going to deal with today and tomorrow. Thursday. Okay, so I'm going to press enter. And it's going to create this empty repository like this, right? Here we go. And for you guys, you can't do this. You have to have your own. But now what I want to do is I want to initialize the Git repository by using Git commands and connect to it in my little machine here, this virtual machine, right? Now, I remember the repository, the commands. You don't have to remember this, but I want to show you the process for the first time. And then afterwards, in the second half of semester, you're going to have to do this on your own. You don't have to necessarily remember the commands, but you need to know how to put this up on GitHub. So let's show you. This is just a you watch, I do thing. So again, we used Git, so we're going to say Git init. Git init, what it does is it initializes a repository. And if you don't know what a repository is, think about it as I create a space where I can take snapshots of my files. Okay, that's what Git init does. And then I want to say git add dot. Git add adds files to my staging area, the stuff that I want to put up on the repository. So git add dot. Good. And then I'll make a commit. Git commit -m for message. We want to call this initial commit. And the other convention is first commit. When we first do our first snapshot of our files, we have to name the snapshot. So don't worry about it. I know you guys are panicking out there and they're like, oh my God, I have to remember all these commands. No, you don't. Don't worry about it right now. Enter. And then it says, oh man, it says something's wrong. It says your name, committer is me. So Tom at localhost.localdomain, da-da-da-da. And of course, this is incorrect. What I want to do is I want to set up my global configuration for me, right? So, whenever you look at Git globals, you're going to have to do this later on, Git global config. One of the things that we're always looking for when we set up local configuration for user, username, and email, right, is what we want. If you notice, it says git config -- global and then username and whatever it is. That's my username, right? So let's set that up. So again, I'm just going to pull this over so you can see part of my screen, but I'll do it. So by the way, notice that you don't see anything special here when I do an ls. Remember, ls is list. But if I do an ls -al, I do see a hidden .git folder that's been just created right now. That's what happens here, okay? Hidden .git folder. And what I want to do is go something like, so git config -- global, and then the name of my user.name, and then I want to put in the username. So it's like my first name and my last name. It has to be, you should probably put it in exactly how it should be. So this is me. Okay, so I did my global configuration, and you would do yours with your name. Okay, and then git config -- global user.email, and then the email address that I'm using, which is just my generic email address. That's the one I use for my general inbox. It's also it's a spam catcher for those people who want to send me spam. Doesn't matter. And then press enter, and that's my global configuration. It's done. So this is a key. So if I do a git status, what git status does is it says on branch master, nothing to commit. If I do a git log, it shows me who the author is, Tom at localhost.localdomain. That's me. I'm the author. But I can still push this up to GitHub by having the proper address, especially now since I've configured my username and email. All right. So now the next step, once I've done this, is to actually connect to GitHub. And GitHub gives you steering instructions. Notice it gives you all this stuff. I did this part. I did these kind of commands. I skipped the README file and I just did git add dot. But more or less, I've done these three things. So now the next two things have to be added in, and I'm going to remember. So the way it works is git remote, right? Add origin https://github.com/ and again, this is Centennial College / the name of my repository, COMP301 M2020 lesson 3.git. And if I did everything right, and if I press enter, we're good to go. Okay? I don't know. You're like, wait, do I have to remember how to do that? Oh my God, I'm panicking. Don't panic. You can copy paste. I didn't. I'm just showing you what you can do. All right, cool. So now that I've got this, I want to do my last step, which is a push. And what push does is it uploads everything to GitHub. So git push, and then -u for unconditional, origin master, and then it's going to push everything up with my username and my password. So I'm going to say, here's my password. Oh, Jesus, that's not my password. It's something else. Let's try username for this one. It's me. This is what I meant to do. Right? That's my username. And then it says my password. Okay, let's try that again. Cool. And if everything goes well for the first time and last time, then boom, it's up. Make sense? All right, so if everything works, then when I go back to my Git repository and refresh, again, this is for you to watch, you can see that now I have 2 files in my repository, and this, the repository is for the actual lesson from today. Now, one thing it says is my repository is private, and I don't want to make it private. You can always change it to public if I want to, right? So notice it says private. I can manage access, right? There we go. Okay. So I can manage access to the repository, right? Because otherwise you won't be able to do anything with it, right? If I give it to you. So here's options, template. Because I don't think you'll be able to see it without. Let me see if that's true. And I'm going to just do all this again in a sec. To revisit this thing, deploy, secrets, all this kind of stuff is good. I'm just going to make sure that I can see this now. Yeah, that should definitely, I think I missed that. I definitely wanted to make a public repository, not a private repository. That's weird. Security 0. Man, this is new. Sorry guys, this is a new thing. Private repository, manage. Let's make it a public repository. Make public. There we go. And type this part in. And that's better. Yay, now you can see it. So, if I share this with you, here's this part, right? And if I share this with you on eCentennial, let's try that out. So I'm going to go new, and I'm going to go to create a link. So we'll say this is week 3 GitHub repo. And now, if you guys go there on eCentennial, I'm going to be sharing files with you just like this every single time. Then, this is the course GitHub link. This is my week 3 GitHub repo. Okay, so if you click there, what it'll do is it'll take you right to that link. It'll take you here, right? So please try that out now so you can see if you can access that stuff. You should have no problem with this, but that is where I'm going to store all my files from now on. Are you with me? All right, so that's what I'm asking you to do. So now check my files against your files. And one thing you can do is this. You can download my repository. So if you actually go to GitHub and you go to this link, you can click clone or download. If you click download, right, then what you can do is you can download the zip file. You can actually open it up in Visual Studio if you had Visual Studio installed on your system, or open it in the desktop if you had GitHub Desktop. But really what we want to do is download the zip file, okay, if you wanted to download this. So you can see that even on my Windows system, so here's my Windows system. I made this in my Linux system, but it's here available to me in my Windows system. So if I went to my Windows system, right, and I just go to Windows for a second, and we'll just minimize this thing. So Linux is running in the background, and I want to put my file here, then I can simply just download my repository. This is on my Windows system. So one day, when it feels like downloading, it's going to do that. Let's try clicking it again. There we go. Oh, haha. It did it, but it's just doing it in another window that you guys can't see. Here it is. So yeah, here's my download. And what I want to do is I want to extract here with 7-zip. Here it is. And you can see it gives me a master, but I got these two things, an index and a scripts, just like you would see in Linux. I have it here on Windows. I'm just going to copy this thing. I'm going to put it on my dirty desktop here. So just Control V for paste, right? And there it is, right, on my desktop. So if I look at the desktop now, there is this new file I just downloaded for COMP301, right? And so I know this to be true. It's here. I'm just not, my eyes aren't seeing it right now, but it's actually down here. It's just that, there it is. So here's my COMP301. This is the one I downloaded, and I can try it out with VS Code on Windows, right, to see what the difference is. So here's VS Code on Windows. It should look almost identical to VS Code on Linux. The great thing about VS Code on Windows is you can drag and drop your folder from anywhere onto VS Code. So I can just download here to this. You can see that it's immediately going to show my code, my same code, with a little bit of code hinting and code coloring and some icon changes on Windows because I've worked extensively in Windows. And I can look at my index.html just like normal. You guys should be able to see this too. This is what yours should look like, just like mine. And if I press Control backtick, just like we've done on the Linux environment, you should be able to pull up Control backtick on Windows if your Windows is configured properly, which, by the way, chances are it's not. But we'll do that in the COMP301 course if you have me. Then what you can do is you can just simply put light-server here on the Windows side, and it should run identically to what we had before, right? So, and if I go to inspect, I can see now at the bottom, I'm running in dark mode, but you can see at the bottom on the console, Tom's app started, right? Really, really cool. So you can share files just like that through GitHub, okay? Yay, everything is grand. Control C to stop the server in Windows, and we can get out of this thing. And you know what, let's just delete this. This is just a test for you guys to see how it worked from Linux to Windows. Okay, so again, this is just you watch I do because I want to show you the workflow. Okay, fantastic. Let's go back to my server now, my little Linux workstation. Okay, so cool, I've got this, and again, if I do ls-al, I can see that I got my hidden.git folder. Can I get in there? So cd.git. The answer is yes, I can. It's actually a hidden.git folder that has kind of information about my file structure and snapshots and all that kind of stuff that I talked about right here in this hidden folder. Let's go back up one. Okay, so this is what you should see. The other way to do this is if you have your files here, you downloaded your files and you install them in your server, you could always just go code, right? And then you could try and launch just the index.html file. So index.html, if you just want to look at that, that should totally work for you if you've installed code properly, right? So you can see that here I have my index.html file exactly in the position that I had it last time when I launched Visual Studio Code, right? So you can see here also I do not have my folder open. I'm just literally using this as an editor now, looking at this one file. If I want to open it up as a project, then what I need to do is open folder just like we did before, where I want to open my folder here in Workspace, press OK, and now VS Code is going to look at my folder, my entire folder here, not just that one file. Okay? Are you with me? Can see files in the repo. What was the command used in VS Code for Windows Terminal? Control backtick. Same command. Link working properly. Good. Control and backtick. That's right, Control backtick. To launch the browser is light-server, remember? So if I do this again, so if I go code index.html, I just put code in here like this, code, and I open up my folder. Notice my folder opens up, right, with code. My last folder that I had open up will open up with code again. And then if in the terminal, if I press Control backtick, inside code, I can just simply put light-server, and if everything goes well, it'll populate my web page with browser sync enabled, and I can pull this on the right side here. And again, I probably would want to do, sorry, I want to use the commands for this. There we go, and that pulls it to the right, and I can pull this one to the left. I can make this, remember, I can make it left, right with my arrow keys, the window arrow right, window arrow left, window max, window min, and then I can pull it to the left. So that's kind of pulled down to the left. There we go. Okay, so that's to the left, this is to the right, and I can work with this way. The other way to do it is you don't have to run light server here, right? Control C here, so it shuts down. But you can actually write lights. You can run light server right here because this is a command line too. So you can kind of clear the screen. You can see that I'm in. I have to have my index.html in the same folder I'm doing this with, and just type in light server. And if everything goes well, then it should still do the same thing here on the Linux side. Okay. Right. So that is all the prep that we're going to do for today and for tomorrow. I wanted to do this prep work so that I can actually do something meaningful with you guys from a file manipulation and utilities perspective, right? That's what I'm going to be doing. It worked in Linux, but didn't work in Windows. And the reason why it didn't work in Windows is because your Windows environment is not set up. You have to install Git and GitHub. You have to install Nodejs. You have to install all those things that we just did on the Linux side on the Windows side, and that is why it's not working on the Windows side. So we'll do that. If you have me for JavaScript, then we'll do that again. I'll get all that installation done with you guys. If not next week, then the week after, because again, it depends on when Patrick is going to let me kind of start teaching for you guys. Okay, so that's when. That's what's going to happen there. Okay, so now we're set up. We have some files that make sense. We know they're real world files. We can use them if you want to. Again, you can see I have a scripts folder and an index.html folder. Now it's time to follow the PowerPoint. Okay, so if I go to the PowerPoint, we're going to start. So there's a lot of little utilities that are included with Linux. That's what this PowerPoint is about. And basically, if you look at the there's different categories. There's networking tasks, programming tasks, a bunch of other kinds of utilities that it's broken into, and these utilities are all little executable binaries that we can make run. Okay, here's an example of file processing utilities. So cat is one of them. We've seen this from last week. Cat, CP for copy, and a big list of stuff that you can that we're going to see. Some of these we're going to use. LPR, it's inside of your documentation, but that's like sends file to the printer. It's actually a line printer. That's what it stands for, LPR. But we don't have a printer, and most of us don't print stuff anymore. It's very rare that we actually print stuff or anything, except maybe a resume when you take to your interview. And nowadays, with COVID-19, there's not even a resume we take to the interview. We just send the resume in PDF format or Word document. So so that's this one. That's file processing, and there's a bunch of other file processing utilities here. This PowerPoint is really just a list of them. So here's make directory. We talked about that last week. Mount and unmount, move, renames and moves files. We did that. We haven't talked about paste. We're going to be talking about paste and all that stuff in this week. PWD for the path. So this is like a bunch of your. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do. This is a bunch of your stuff here. That we haven't talked about. Some of it we haven't talked about. Some of it you have talked about. But these are basically file processing utilities that you're going to have, going to be using this semester. Okay, and then some system status utilities. Date, df, which is the disk free space. Du, right, summarizes how much space we have left. Then there is finger. This is interesting. Let's try that finger command. By the way, it's not a dirty word. It's not give them the finger, man. It's not like that. It's actually, if I just type in finger, it says, if it was working like this, right? It says install package finger to provide finger. Sure. Right, let's see if we need to load a list of packages that's going to work. That's really weird that finger's not installed. It says finger client. Do you want to make changes? Sure, let's do it. It's authenticating, downloading, and installing. Yay. And then if I type in finger, you can see that I'm going to get this command. Yay. Awesome. It tells me who is logged in. Tom. Right? And it also tells me my total idle time and the time that I logged in, 1642. Remember, that's 4:42 in military time. That's when we started this thing. And that's when it kind of shows that I logged in. Awesome. So that's finger. And there's a bunch of other ones. Free displays the amount of free and used memory in the system. Let's try that. So we'll say free. And it says, okay, so here is my my memory, right? And here's how much is being used, right? And here's how much is free. Okay, so free memory. Okay. Remember, how much did we allocate to this VM? Does anyone remember? I know, finger, eh? It's actually I think we allocated 4 gigs, if I'm not wrong. And that's what this is really showing. It's showing, hey, this is my total memory. Here's how much memory I'm using. I'm using about 1 gig of memory, or just under that. Here's how much free memory I have. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So that is free. And there's also PS. We did that last week. And we also did, if I go in clear, if I do PS, that's kind of showing me who's logged in or what processes are running. If I do a PS minus AL, that's kind of more information about the processes that are running. If I do a PS minus E, that's all the processes, both hidden and visible, that are running on the system. You can see there's quite a few of them, PS minus E. And this is the process ID, right? Process ID. So, you can scroll down to see anything that's running, whether it's in the background or not, right? So here you can see gnome session, gnome shell. Don't want to kill those, that's for sure. Actually, there's nothing here that I really want to kill right now, because if I kill some of these, it'll make my system unstable. Here's the bash. That's interesting. I got my bash shell running it on ID 7273, right? Okay, let's try that again. So let's do PS. Can I combine them? So if I go, man PS as an example, you can see that I have some commands, PS minus E, right? So every process on the system. To see every process on the system using BSD syntax, it's this way, AX and AXU. To print the process tree, okay, cool. To get info about threads, okay. To get security information, you can do it this way. PS is a really powerful command that we're going to be hitting definitely more than one time, right? See every process running as root, right? This is important as well. And so on. You can see how this works, and you can see there's different commands. So minus E, select all the processes, and it's identical to minus capital A, right? And that's what this is, right? You can see that I can keep going down. There's quite a few other ones that we can use, and there's other ones where you can identify a process for a specific user, okay? So that's what processes are. So again, if I say so PS, and I want to, if I do minus L, you can see it's like this. So if I PS minus EL, you can see that I have all the processes in a list format, and it gives you your user ID or your process, your unique identifier. That's what that is. Your process ID and a bunch of other stuff. Okay. And it also tells you the type of process that we have going on right here. If you notice on the top here, it says there's F and S, and these are just types. Make sense? So that is your PS tool, and we're going to see more of that later. Top, it says dynamically displays the status of processes in real time focusing on those processes that are using the most CPU resources. So the processes that are CPU intensive is top. So let's try that. So if I go clear and if I go top, then you can see that these are the current processes that are CPU intensive. Let's open up another shell for a second. All right, so it tells you, it kind of gives you the amount of CPU resources. So again, my CPU is at 0.7%, right? You can see that. And it tells you how much is idle. Most of it is idle, my CPU. How much memory is being used, how much memory is free. This is a pretty cool thing, top, to use. And it's showing you some, it's kind of your kind of good information. If I want to, I can add in another terminal window. So let's add another one in. So there's the other terminal window. Okay, and so here's this. Okay, and notice that, just going to bring the top over here so we can see this on the side. I'm just going to make it so that you can see one thing on this side and the other thing on the other side here, so we can kind of see both at the same time as things change, right? So again, you can look and try and identify some of these threads. So this top actually is taking quite a bit of processes because, or process or threads, because it's running right at the kind of in the background. There it is, right? I can press Control C to stop that, and if I clear it again, one thing I can do is if I put top and then if I press the ampersand sign after top, what it can do is it can run in the background, so it doesn't have to take up, it won't stop my process. You can see it runs it, but then it stops it right away, right? Why? Because top is kind of a real-time process that needs to run like this. It's going to show you, all right? So that's one thing that's going to happen. But if you want a process to run in the background, some kind of back-end worker, you can do that with the ampersand, and we'll show you that another time. All right, so it kind of shows you two things. So this is the most intensive processes here at the top. That's why it's called top. And if I was to do the same thing, so if I swim to my, now watch the right while I'm typing and see what happens. So if I go to my / documents, right, and then workspace and press enter, and if I run, watch this, if I run light-server, then we should see more memory intensive stuff running now on the right. And for a moment we did. For a moment we saw that Chrome was pretty intensive, and you can see now Chrome is a process that's taking a lot more resources, and Chrome is actually pretty memory hungry in general, and especially if I refresh, if you see if I refresh this page, what's going to happen, it's going to actually show the usage of Chrome right here. Okay, so you can see that. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's in real time, but it'll actually show the amount of resources that are being used. Okay, and again, what you want to look at is things like CPU, the CPU column, which is here, and the memory column. So you can see that, Chrome is taking up about 1.7%. This process is 1.7% of the CPU, and it fluctuates, and that's what it does because Chrome is pretty hungry, right? Pretty hungry because there's multiple processes that are running for Chrome in the background. And if I stop Chrome, as an example, I release some of the resources, so CPU is not going to be at 7.2 anymore. You can see that it dropped to 0.2. Especially if I drop this process, it's going to drop right down again to a reasonable level. So top is a really interesting command as it gives you some information about the processes that are running. Control C to stop. All right, so cool. So that is that one. And we kind of talk about some of the common ones. There's more we're going to talk later. We did some of these, right? FTP. If config, we did that last time, so it sets up a network interface, but it also shows our network interface, and we did that. Remember what that does for us? It tells us our IP address. So if I do if config and press enter at the top, what it'll do is it'll show me my local IP address, and it's showing me 192.168.2.60 because I've configured bridging to work with my VM. Okay, so kind of we've shown that before. We can log into a remote computer. We can do our login for that. If we try doing it on the same computer, so if I say something like our login and press enter, you can see that nothing's found. But what if I did something like our login 192, localhost or 127.0.0.1, right? And let's try login 127.0.0.1. You know, it's like I'm logging in again, right? And I'm trying to log in to my local host. Remember, we tried this before. SSH and logging into your local environment won't work like this, right? So we'd have to log into something like another machine, okay? So that's one. But login does allow us to log into a remote. SSH we did before. We also have other commands like telnet and other network utilities here. Then we have some communication utilities like mail. Okay, this is interesting. I want to send mail to somebody, sends electronic mail messages. So now, can it be done? So if I clear, here we go, and I want to do man mail and no entry for mail. Okay, so what about if I type in mail? Is that possible? It says command not found. It's looking around to try and find if I have a command. Do I want to install it, right? Install package mail X to provide command mail. Sure, let's do it. What is it going to do for me? And it's almost like, in this case, what's happening is Fedora is only installing stuff that we absolutely need. It'll install some of its no mail for Tom. It'll install some of its dependencies as well. So mail by itself checks to see if I have mail from another user. This is like inside my network. It has nothing to do with mail, like a mail account. Okay, I'm not setting up a mail account that's outside of my network, right? So if I do man mail, now I have mail X, where I can send and receive internet mail, and it gives you some examples of how to do that. Okay, minus B, so send blind carbon copy to a list. Minus A, an account command. Minus C sends carbon copies to a list of users, right? Enables debugging messages, and so on. You can see that can send a file, read the file contents, print my header, summaries, and a list, and a bunch of other things. You can see if I really want to send mail to myself. If I follow a list here, minus T name writes the message ID and article ID header fields of each message. Minus U user reads the mailbox of the given username, and so on. And to send mail, it says to one or more people, mail X can be invoked with arguments which are the names of people to whom the mail will be sent. Okay, cool. And then the user expects to type in his message, followed by a control D at the beginning of the line. The section below, replying to originating mail, describes some features of mail X available to help when composing letters. Okay, cool. So that's interesting. So let's see if I can send mail to myself. So again, mail, and then it says I have to send mail to my email address, and then control D after I stop. Okay, so let's try that out. So I'll say mail X, or mail to me, if I can type my name. Subject is a test, and let's write some stuff. Hi, this is a test, and then control D, right? It says, okay, no such file or directory, home, Tom, dead letter, message not sent. Why is that? Well, a couple reasons. I don't have a mail agent. There's nothing that's going to send it. This is great for internal mail. For example, if I want to send a message to John, if John was a user, then I can certainly do that. So let's set up John with the command, with the UI again. So if I go back to my applications, and if I look at my settings, remember we did this last time where I set up a new user called John. So if I scroll all the way down where it says users, and let's make a new guy. So I'm gonna unlock this one with my password. Okay, you may be asked to add a user in the future. Add user. We're gonna make this guy. His name will be how about we'll call him Tom Smythe, right? Tom Smythe, right? Sure. Tom.Smythe is going to be his username, Tom.Smythe, right? There we are. And we'll set a password below. We'll make it a little bit complex again. So we'll say something like, remember what we had to do last time? So something like, hopefully that's good enough. It is. There we go. So we've got everything matching. We're going to click add to add this guy in. Tom Smythe. Awesome. And he's not an administrator. He's just a regular dude, right? And I want to send mail to him now. All right. So remember, he's never logged in. Let's log him in for the first time. So the way to do that is I want to log out or switch user. Switch user is what I want to do. So I want to switch over to this other guy. Okay, so there's Tom Smythe. So I'm not really logged out. I'm still in the system, but and we can see if that works. And then for the first time, it's going to give us all these steering directions about Tom Smythe and how if you want to have English as your first language and blah, 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 and some settings, I can definitely choose the stuff that I want here because it's running the first time setup for Tom Smythe, right? So give it a sec if you're trying this at home, and if you made your own username, remember that how this works, right? So it takes a second. And let's try it again. Remember, we did this twice last time. We have to do it twice this time. Okay, welcome. Okay, we're choosing English next. And yes, English is good. I don't want automatic problem reporting. Location services are okay. Sure, and skip. And start using Fedora. Awesome. And what I want here is to simply go in here. So I want to go into my terminal. So I can do a terminal. Here's my terminal editor. There it is. So I can kind of go in here. And if I do a who, you can see Tom is also logged in. There's Tom, that's me. And Tom Smythe, this new dude, whoever that is. Okay. And what I can do now is if I switch users again, so I go log off, switch user. One day when my system wants to respond to me, and go back to Tom. We'll stop here after this. And log in, and we're back to this. Tom Smythe has been created. If I do a who now, you can see Tom Smythe is there. Let's try sending that mail again. Whoa, that was weird. That's kind of logged me out. I love it. I love when things do weird stuff. Okay, and then if I do a mail, and if I do Tom.Smythe, right, Tom.Smythe, and a subject is test, and then hello, Tom number 2, right? And if I press Control D, and it says, hey, dead letter, no such file or directory. User bin, sbin, send mail, no such file or directory. And this is because of message not sent, and this reason is because my mail is not set up properly. But the great thing about this is it did the same thing twice for me, which means that I'm following the right process. It's just I'm not doing this. I'm going to fix this for you guys next day. But notice what it says. It says go to home Tom dead letter to see what that is. So if I go there, so if I go to list, and if I do cd followed by a tilde, there it is. So home, and then Tom, this is Tom, and then see dead letter. So if I do, now it's not a folder because it's not blue, right? Which means it's just this. So let's do code dead.letter and see what that is. So we can see what Visual Studio Code brings us. One day. I love when things mess up like this. This is fantastic. And I really love when I get like these blank, kind of scenes here like this. Dead letter is like completely black, and Visual Studio Code is also black. That's like not good. All right, let's try that again. Oh yeah, VS Code is choosing not to run on me right now because I'm probably taking up too many resources because I got Tom Smythe logged in at the same time as Tom. All right, believe it or not, it does take additional resources for this, right? So yeah, we want to shut this thing down, that's for sure. And just to be certain, what I want to do is I'm just going to, one thing to note is if I swap my user or log off, suspend or power off, let's say something like this, as other users are logged in, do I want to restart anyway? And the answer is yes, I do, because I'm the super user, so I can do that, and I can log back in. Sometimes you need to do this kind of thing, guys, on a VM. It is what it is. Don't be scared, though. Yeah, 4 gigs of RAM is low. But again, you have to have quite a bit of resources to allocate more. Okay, one thing to note is we are running at the end of our session right now, 6:21. Remember that while this is loading up, some stuff for you guys. One of the things that I want to tell you is that remember that your quiz number 2 is going to be due on Friday. And what about assignment 1? When is that due? That's also due Friday at midnight. So hopefully you guys have started assignment 1. Please don't wait around to start assignment 1 late. That would be a bad decision on your part. And the reason for that is because you've got a lot of stuff coming up, and I'm going to give you assignment number 2 soon, which is coming up fast and furious. All right, let's take a look. So as soon as this kicks off, cool. We've got this coming up, and please bear with me while I run this up again. So if I go back to that, let's go look at that dead letter again. So I want to go, here is this. I want to look at dead letters. I want to go code dead.letter. Should not give me a black screen now, because we've rejigged this thing. Yay, there it is. And you can see that I've got this, right? I've got dead letter, and I've got 2 of them, right? I've got this little thing right here, date, and then this is my first letter, right? And this is my second letter, and they both failed, right? So we're going to figure this out. When I come back on Thursday, I'll show you how to fix this problem, but this is not a big problem to fix, because I'm also doing 2 things. I'm setting this up. Remember that 2, and then my user agent is heirloom male X. That's what's happening. And then notice what I'm missing is I don't have a from. It's actually from me, but I don't have a from here. And so there's piece parts of this thing I'm missing, and that's possibly what's causing me to have a problem. And so we're going to recompose this later on. But this is good. This is showing you what happens when things fail, and it's better to show things that are failing every single time instead of things that are always succeeding. All right. Any questions before we end? I will stick around for anything that I've covered. Any questions around what I've covered so far? And I'm going to stick around for any other questions. If you have questions around installation, or if you want me to stick around for another few minutes after this, I can stick around to do that. Otherwise, if you have no questions, I will see you all on Thursday, and we'll continue with this. Please, again, don't forget to do your quiz number 2 before Friday. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop recording this one, and then what we'll do is thank you. Have a good day for you as well. I will hang out if you have any questions or anyone else has any problems that I can assist them with. Okay, thanks, guys. I'm going to stop recording this now.